Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's poppin'?
What's up, dog?
It is Thursday, January 9th, 2020. It kind of just sounded like we were like the intro to a drug paraphernalia podcast.
I thought we were. What? We're not.
What's poppin'?
What are we recording?
What are we recording? My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon right across from me, as always.
What's up?
On this episode of the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast, we give you the top five. I say our top five, like we're going to talk about the top five players for certain things.
I thought we were.
Not yet.
What is this show about?
The top five things
Drugs.
we learned from 2019. Top five things we learned from 2019 fantasy football. Before we jump right into that, we have a quick question to go over, and we want to give you the runaround as normal.
Okay.
Check out our website at thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter at the FFChamps, on Instagram at the Fantasy Champions. If Facebook is your thing, you are
a little slow in times, but that's okay.
Politics lover.
Oh gosh.
And you are on Facebook for
you also really love old, very boring memes.
Or getting attacked.
You probably
with
like
videos.
cats.
With
Nothing wrong with cats. I like cats as well. But
you can like us at Facebook at facebook.com/Fantasy Champions. Subscribe wherever you listen. Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube. Click the bell on YouTube for notifications and leave a review. Share this podcast with your friends. I just got my tongue tied there, so I was untied.
Probably not the first or last time that will happen.
Yes. So let's get into the quick question to start the episode. I want you to name one player you're excited to see blossom in 2020.
I literally had no thought whatsoever in my brain except Devin Singletary when you asked me that.
You were like,
dude,
you literally closed your eyes and you saw Devin Singletary sitting on a throne.
Yeah, pretty much.
He and then he stood up with a sword and slayed Frank Gore.
Now that is my dream come true.
What if they signed Jordan Howard?
Well, then you see that window right there.
Just jump right through it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. No, I think Frank Gore's done.
Okay.
And we've been saying all year how good Devin Singletary looks. He just needs more opportunity. He finally got that opportunity a little later in the season. Was getting like 15 to 20 fantasy points a week.
Yeah.
Another year under his belt. Hopefully Frank Gore gone. And if the Bills don't do anything else at running back, and just let Singletary be the guy, I think he can be an RB1 next year.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I do. I'm a big Singletary.
We're jumping right back in. This is
low-end RB1.
Wow.
But yeah.
Yeah, dude, I like Singletary too. It all depends on the stupidity of the Bills.
Yeah, that's
Frank Gore is continually destroying lives 1 week at a time. He's so bad. He's above and beyond. Like, I love you, Frank Gore.
It's hard because he used to be very good too. But he's what, 37?
You were good like 2 decades ago. So I just don't like it very much. I don't know. The situation is not great, but I love Devin Singletary, so I'll agree with you.
Okay.
My guy is a soft take, and I hope that Jordan Howard's contract is 1 year. I think I just gave it away.
Well, who could it be?
I believe it is 1 year contract.
I don't know. Gotta look that up.
But anyway, it's Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders, in half PPR, had 157 total fantasy points in just yardage.
That's ridiculous.
He played a lot of the season. He had some opportunities to be the guy, and he had some opportunities to not be the guy. And he also has a really good offensive line, and hopefully that offense is improved next year to get into the red zone. The one thing that he didn't do well was red zone opportunities,
yeah,
which is not something he can control. It's just something they give him. So if they get him the ball more often, he's an extremely explosive back. I could have named 100 players, including one A.J. Brown, who I am in love with right now. But I think Miles Sanders is probably a really good shot in a similar sense to be an RB1 next year as well. Especially, it depends. Like you said, Singletary depends on if he's the guy. In Philly, it's the same thing. It depends on if Philadelphia makes him the guy in that offense. Because if he becomes the guy, there's no doubt in my mind he could at least be in our high-end RB2.
Jordan Howard is a UFA this season.
Okay, so that would I would be inclined if I was Philly to let him walk.
Yes, yeah, I would.
He's not a bad running back, but I think you got your young running back sitting in the wings waiting to be unleashed, and I think that they're going to do it like they did with Ajayi. I was also going to throw in this conversation Raheem Mostert, but I have a whole offseason to talk about Raheem Mostert, so stay tuned, Fantasy Champions community. Are you ready to do this thing?
I'm ready.
This episode for the next 18 and a half minutes.
Okay, well, let's try. Let's do it.
We are going to talk about the top three.
This is on you.
The top.
Okay.
Listen, bro. Yeah,
I'm going to keep it 18.
Zoinked.
Right, which means it's you controlling it. So you can talk about one topic for 25 minutes.
Top 5 things we learned from 2019 fantasy football.
Okay.
Segment drop.
Choo. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So I'll start off. Number 1. This is one thing you actually went, ooh, that's interesting. When I read it. Because it is interesting, and it is. I always do a end of season biopsy of my draft, of my fantasy team, what I could have done right, what I could have done wrong. I haven't done it yet, so that's why I was very cocky before the show, saying I did nothing wrong. But anyway, one of the things that off the top of my head that I learned this year was that location matters. Location matters when you draft. Location matters for free agents. Location matters for guys you really like and guys you really don't like. For example, many examples I have of what I mean. And I'll say the tagline of what I mean so it'll make full sense to you. I picked Kenyon Drake as an RB1 before the season. Yeah. I was like, that was my bold take. I was like, one of my bold takes. I was like, oh, Kenyon Drake's going to be an RB1. The talent's there. The ability's there. We saw what he could do when he was not tied to the Miami Dolphins when he got traded to Arizona. He's a good running back. When he was in Miami, he was so bad.
Yeah.
He averaged like 3 yards a carry. It was just a bad situation. And everyone was like, well, Kenyon Drake's just really bad. And I'm like, no, I'm telling you right now, he's not that bad. He's just in a terrible situation. David Montgomery, another guy I fell in love with. Bad situation. The team's not bad. And that one you couldn't predict as accurately
I'm not a big Montgomery guy after seeing him after 1 year, but...
What'd you say?
I'm not a big David Montgomery guy after seeing him.
No, I don't disagree with you. But I'm saying the situation, the situation matters.
Yes.
So where a player plays is just as important as the opportunity he gets. Yeah. David Montgomery dropped. I predicted he would go to the Chicago Bears. He's a good running back. He runs downhill. He has assets to his game that he can bring, like good assets to his game that he can bring, right?
Okay.
Problem? And we were all hyped up about the opportunity that David Montgomery was going to get. Problem for David Montgomery is simply that offense is so bad. The offensive line is bad.
Yep.
The wide receivers, the quarterback's really bad. The opportunity for him was not there. Like he could have rushed for 1,200 yards this year and still not gotten into the top 15 of running backs, just because of the pure fact that they weren't getting into the red zone. It was as simple as that for them. So, and I could go through a laundry list of players that I really like, but that for years, not me specifically, but people have been talking about Devontae Parker being this guy. Finally did it this year, but it was always the situation for him. Where he was not equating to fantasy points. So what I'm going to do next year, as something that I learned from this, is that I'm going to look at players not just for the type of player that they are, the talent that they are, but where they're landing too. And I think
I think that is very important.
I think that gets overlooked. I overlooked that massively last year doing research.
Yeah. Another thing on our list is stream QBs.
You're so messed up right now.
What, me?
Another thing on our list.
Listen, I'm trying right now. I'm using all my effort. Okay.
This is why you don't podcast after you eat a meal.
Yeah. And you haven't slept in a while. Anyway, yeah. So I think streaming QBs is something that
Finally,
you have been saying.
finally. I'm gonna rant in a second, but continue.
Okay, well, I see that's.
He's like, it's not fair.
I was never against streaming QBs.
You weren't against it, but you weren't for it either.
I was just
You
like,
were indifferent.
I was like, if Mahomes is there, I'm drafting him. If Deshaun Watson's there, I'm drafting him. After this year, you're smirking at me.
you felt the burn that I felt like the last 3 years.
Yeah, a little bit. Definitely a little bit. Watson wasn't bad, but
It's hard to remember when you have the QB1.
Yeah, I know. He wasn't what I wanted him to be. And now, even like 2 years ago, you said I had the QB1 and Mahomes.
Yeah.
Mahomes in a lot of leagues went undrafted.
Yeah.
And going into week 1, he was like a QB stream
Right.
option. So if you draft a QB early, you're usually committed to that guy for the whole season.
Yeah.
We had guys in our league that drafted Baker Mayfield and stayed with him way too long. Jared Goff stayed with him way too long.
Yeah.
Those types of players. Matt Ryan the entire season.
Oh, boy.
And it was like,
Yeah.
he's okay.
Rodgers,
but
too.
Aaron Rodgers, yeah. There's tons of these guys. Especially Rodgers, because he was very early, so nobody's going to want to drop or bench Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
Even though there was at times this season where he had a bad matchup, you should have started someone else. You might not have.
Right.
But
Mahomes essentially missed 3
streaming
games and got
quarterbacks,
hurt.
yeah. We gave you 2 guys every year. Every week, sorry, not every year. We gave you 2 guys each week throughout the season to stream, and every single week,
85 to 90% right.
one of us got it right, or if not, both of us got it right.
Right.
You could usually pick out 4 guys, and you'll get 3 of them right each week. It's just a matter of making sure you get the right guy. You're not always going to get the right guy, but your chances of getting the right guy, I think, are higher than just sitting and hoping Aaron Rodgers gets 30 fantasy points against the 49ers.
Right. I think the perfect example of this, and obviously this year, this guy wasn't drafted high, so maybe it's not a perfect example, but is a guy like Russell Wilson, who's going to get drafted high this year.
Yep.
He's one of the most
every single year he gets drafted kind of high, but never like number 1.
He's one of the most inconsistent quarterbacks on the market. He gets you 3 40-point games in one season, and then the rest of the time is garbage. But because he put 120 points up in 3 games, that's half of his fantasy point outage, and he ends up in like the top 4. And it's like every year that happens. Every year people freak out, and every year's like, oh, Russell Wilson, let's go. It's like he's never going to be consistent fantasy football-wise. He'll be consistent in real life, but never in fantasy football. Like, that's what I've come to the conclusion with him, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy. But anyway, the reason why, and the stupid part for me, this is where I went against my own takes this year slightly.
Because you
not until the end. I streamed at the end.
Yes.
I picked up Mr. Dak, and I got stuck.
Yeah, but he was good though.
No, he was very good. He was a top 3 quarterback.
Yeah.
The problem with Dak Prescott was not that he wasn't good. It was that his end of season schedule was extremely hard, and I think his success as a quarterback this year was predicated on the early part, which is why I didn't stream, because he was facing so many bad matchups in a row that it was like there's no reason to bench the guy. So, but anyway, I've told you streaming. I told you all offseason last year, streaming quarterbacks is the way to go. The reason why I say this is because, like, go out, get yourself a streaming quarterback, right?
Yes.
Week to week, plan to stream. Wait till the 13th, 14th round. Draft a sleeper unknown quarterback that you could possibly have a Lamar Jackson-like breakout. I'm not saying it's going to be QB1, but because right now, outside of Lamar, there's not a quarterback that I would trust in this league in terms of fantasy football, besides maybe Mahomes and Lamar.
Okay.
Safe to say?
Yeah.
So outside of those 2 guys, I don't want a quarterback. Problem is, do you want to draft Patrick Mahomes in the top 3?
Gosh.
Top 3 rounds?
No.
Do you want to draft Lamar Jackson in the top 2 rounds?
No.
Because I know you might do it in the 3rd.
No, I don't. I really don't.
So for me, it's like there's no reason to sit here and go, oh my gosh, I need to get a quarterback in the 5th round. I need to get a quarterback in the 6th round. Oh, I really like this guy in the 7th. Why not just go after a guy in the 15th, 14th, 15th round, and then intend on streaming quarterbacks for the whole season and walk into a door with Lamar Jackson? Because people win fantasy championships Your league probably had Lamar win, and you're like, oh, I need to get that high-end quarterback, and I got to waste a first, second, and third round pick. No. The guys that went, you won the fantasy championship last year. The guy and you owned Mahomes.
Yeah.
Mahomes was what, 9th, 10th, 11th round pick that year?
Oh, gosh. I think
Sometimes
I took him
even undrafted.
12th, I think.
And then you see Lamar this year, 14th round.
Yep.
Right? 13th, 14th round ADP.
14th, I think, yeah.
People got him, and he was a league winner. He won you fantasy championships, right?
Yep.
Were those guys drafted in the top 3?
No.
I could go back in time and do this over and over and over again. Like, the only guy that I could see in the past 5 to 10 years that would give you maybe a performance that would warrant a first round or second round pick where he repeated it is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, but even then,
it wasn't even
he usually didn't have back-to-back great seasons.
Right.
He would have a great season, a good season, injured season, great season.
So, what? And the big thing that I told you last year, this is the last thing I'll say on stream quarterback. This is the big thing I told you last year was that you can stick with a good quarterback. In 2018, I had Andrew Luck during those 20-point games. And every week it was like, wow, this guy's killing it. And then got to the playoffs, 7.
Yeah,
because I relied on him instead of going after a guy.
If you do have a good quarterback, right? Yeah, don't be afraid to bench him.
Yeah,
for a QB streaming option.
Right.
If he's
and
on a bad matchup.
like Dak was going off. He had like 25, 31, 27, and then he had this matchup against New England where I was like, maybe I should start him. I feel like I'm going to get bit in the butt if I don't. And then I benched him for, I think it was Tannehill, and he went off.
Yeah.
And or Dak didn't go off, but Tannehill did. So it's like, don't be afraid to, like, if you're talking about Mahomes is just a guy that you have to start, and Lamar is a guy that you're going to have to start, unfortunately. This is why I don't like...
Maybe not, unfortunately, maybe.
But, like, there's going to be weeks where Lamar doesn't play well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why I just don't like trusting in one player to get the job done. Because I fully believe that you can go out... Yeah, streaming quarterbacks, you're probably not going to get a 42-point game. That's likely. Probably not. You'll get that if you have Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes on your team. You might get a 40-point game, 35-point game out of them. But there's a good chance that you could get 25 to 30 points streaming. Now, imagine a quarterback. How high would you draft a quarterback if you knew he was going to get you 25 to 30 fantasy points every single week?
If I knew?
If you knew.
I would consider
You had the sports almanac from back in the future.
I'd take him in the second round, actually.
Honestly, I might too.
Yeah.
But you have that option with streaming. You might miss sometimes. It's not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
But you're going to get it more times than not, instead of having to rely on Russell Wilson to possibly get you these massive games. So anyway.
It's more in your control.
League number 3 is league winners are important to winning leagues.
Yes, which is... So it seems very obvious of a statement, but it's very true. Your team, for example, as you said, you had the perfect team, all this stuff. You were missing one
Zeke,
important thing.
Dak, Leonard Fournette,
Zeke,
Chris
Dak.
Godwin, DeAndre Hopkins, Darren Waller, Julian Edelman. I just wanted
Sounds
to
like a good team.
Baltimore Ravens D. I had a good team.
That was at the end, but yes. That was from like more streaming defense.
Listen, bro.
What were you missing? I don't hear Michael Thomas. I don't hear Dalvin Cook. I don't hear Aaron Jones. I don't hear Christian McCaffrey.
Lamar Jackson.
I don't hear Lamar Jackson. You're missing. Your team was just missing the guy.
Yeah.
You were missing the guy.
It's so funny how that works.
I know.
In fantasy football.
Would you rather?
And it sounds stupid. Like, people are going to be like, of course league winners win leagues. But I had a really good team, and I wasn't able to pull it off.
Would you rather have a team that, like your team, or would you rather have like a mediocre team, but it had Christian McCaffrey and Lamar Jackson?
I'm not going to lie. I thought about this. I said, I love building super teams, so I'll never go away from it. Like, I'll always try to get the studs. It's all about the studs. And at some point, I'm going to draft a freaking stud that's a league winner, and I'm going to build my super team. So it's going to happen. But anyway,
you kind of did 2 years ago, didn't you?
Yeah, and I got screwed in week 17. But anyway, no, it was because I got 2. I got Zeke and Todd Gurley were both league winners.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. But anyway, the reason, like, for me, it's more or less a, like, I don't know. You kind of have to... It's hard for me because I like the flexibility of having the ability to say no to a player. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like, like for example, I just started Julian Edelman in my playoff round 1 after my bye week. I just started Julian Edelman because I covered my eyes and was like, even though he has a bad matchup and the Patriots offense has not been good, I need to start this guy in my flex because he's a wide receiver 1. He's one of my studs. I got to start him. I can't not start him.
Right.
And I had thought about earlier in the week because Julian Edelman had this shoulder injury everyone was talking about. Maybe he's questionable. Maybe I should play Kenyon Drake. Would have won my week. He scored 40-something points that week.
Yeah, and Edelman got...
And Edelman got 2.
Yep.
I would have won. So it's like, it's that situation of maybe being a little more flexible would help you. Would help you
might go to
win in the playoffs, not in the regular season.
Yeah, regular season is just best team. But like, would not having a super team help that argument a little bit though? Because like,
that's what I'm saying. The flexibility of not having a super team. If you had
the theoretical team of McCaffrey and Lamar and like an average team, you could build the rest of your team with quote unquote cheap assets,
right?
That ended up just doing what their job as like role players on your team could do, like Austin Eckler, Devontae Parker that you could have got on the waiver wire, like cheaper guys, tight end like Austin Hooper or someone like that, like cheap guys, that you could have got on the waiver wire cheap in trades that could fill the rest of your roster and are also flexible where you can put them on the bench if you wanted to. Like that sort of team might be better in some cases than a super team.
I think for weeks 14, 15, and 16, I would say yes.
But through the regular season, no.
What I was trying to do this year more specifically was, in the past, I had built my teams through, when I was trading, when I was picking up waiver wire additions, I just built them to win regular season games. It was like, I need to win this week, and this player is going to help me do that. I like the schedule. You know what I mean? I picked up as many studs as I possibly could, stuck them on my team, and I won games. The last 4 years in our personal league, I've won 9 or more games. Yeah. So I've been very good in the regular season. The second I get to the postseason, my team falls to pieces. and the problem is that I never looked at schedule. This year I looked at schedule, and it still didn't work. The last 3 weeks of the season, I averaged, in our half PPR league, I averaged about 127 points a game and still lost.
Yeah.
So it was like, I think it was over weeks 14, 15, and 16, 127 points a game all those weeks. Does that win you weeks? Should.
It'll win you weeks, yeah.
I didn't. So it's as simple as that sometimes. Sometimes you just get screwed right out of wins. But I'm like you said, having that guy who can constantly, like Mike Thomas, Christian McCaffrey, maybe some more surprise guys. You know what I mean? Like Chris Godwin was supposed to be that guy.
Yes.
But
yeah, you can throw him in there.
But it's like to have those guys who are monster players that win, like Lamar, 14th round pick.
Yeah.
Like that type, and then gets you like week 15 in the fantasy playoffs, gets you 42 fantasy points.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous.
So it's like, but ridiculous. On Thursday Night Football, gets you 39 to 40 fantasy points, and you're sitting there. The other team is sitting there going, "Mother of God, how am I going to surmount this?" You can't. So league winners are important to winning leagues, and it sounds stupid, but it's true.
It's very factual.
Yeah.
Take it from us of what we learned.
Like you said, I do like that flexibility idea, and I'm not really sure how to accomplish it without completely, ruining myself. But
maybe
it's
do
almost
your strat and then like trade deadline time.
I'll just sell everyone.
Put all your chips in for like one guy.
Yeah.
1 or 2 guys, and then. But that would be too. But then that would be too late, though.
See the league winners.
Because then at that point,
no, because what the league people would be tied to their.
I mean, it would be too late. No, not even that. But it'd be too late to fill the rest of your roster.
Yeah.
Unless you already had the best bench in the league, then okay, and the best starters in the league. Good luck with that.
What if you made it a strategy to try to acquire early in the first 4 to 5 weeks? Everything changes.
Cheap
though. Like,
assets.
You could no. I mean, I was gonna say try to acquire a league winner early in the season, but like you could have said Chris Godwin was gonna be a league winner the first 5 weeks.
Oh gosh, you could have said Keenan Allen. That's the problem. You could have said Cooper Kupp.
Right.
You could have said a lot of these guys.
But I think maybe there needs to be a little more flexibility in terms of saying, okay, we're gonna try to move our guy out of like that. Like for me, Julian Edelman, he probably should have been a player that I looked at. At the time, you're thinking, no, don't bench Julian. But now that I look back on it, he probably should, don't bench Zeke.
Yep.
But you could bench Julian Edelman justifiably. without having people
Yeah.
go, "You're an idiot. Why did you do that?"
If you have a good bench.
I'm just so mad that I didn't start Kenyon Drake. It's always one of those decisions that you go, "Dang it, why didn't I do it?"
I'm still thinking of my Tom Brady decision in like 2014.
But the other thing is, when you're talking about league winners, how do you acquire them in the off season instead of sitting here, whether you're in dynasty or you're drafting? How you have to do the research, and I in our league we have a guy who just walks in and with a sticky note and doesn't do any research all off season. He roasts me hardcore, me and you, because we both do a crap ton of research, and obviously an entire off season of research to get to the point where we are. And we had a lot of really accurate predictions, but he always makes fun of us. He's like, "Oh, I can get to the playoffs without even having to do any research or any work." And it's like, yeah, the fantasy football is fantasy football. You can get lucky, but like, you know what I mean?
That guy usually doesn't go that far.
Yeah, no, not at all. But it's like he beat me, which just fricked me. But but like, how can you predict the league winners before the season starts? And that's kind of where it's hard to do.
That's so hard to do. I mean, some people might have predicted Dalvin Cook.
Right.
Some people might have predicted Lamar a little
Hutchison,
bit.
read his articles.
Yes, he did predict Dalvin Cook.
Yes.
But usually, it's borderline impossible. Mm-hmm. That's the aspect of fantasy football. That's where the luck comes in a little bit.
Right.
But on the other side, the skill part of the fantasy football will come in of being the first to identify the league winners. Right. Which is also a very hard thing to do.
Like I've talked about how I almost got Michael Thomas this year.
Yes.
And it was when this guy, his team name is Do It for Jules, as in Do It for Julian Edelman. He named his team that when Julian Edelman got hurt and tore his ACL like 2-3 years ago. And so, but he basically had Julian Edelman on his team every year, and I had Julian Edelman. I'm like, I can get this guy. I'm like, I could totally get him to take Julian Edelman. He wanted Julian, and I had this breakout wide receiver in Chris Godwin that I was offering, as well as some massive running back bench assets that I held on to for a long time. So, like, he was like very tempted into doing this deal.
Yeah.
In the end, he made because I burned him many times in the past, he made the
You would have burned him again.
He made the right decision to keep Michael Thomas, but like, you identify that. If you identify it early enough, you can get other people to panic and freak out. But what is our number 4?
Oh gosh, I didn't have the list in front of me. You just put me right there on the spot.
Do you want me to say it?
Number 4. Number 4, if I pull it up again. Okay, don't panic when your stud is underperforming. This goes out to a lot of guys.
Yeah, we didn't necessarily learn this because we don't panic when our stud is underperforming.
When let's see, let's think of an example. Who's somebody who had like 2 bad weeks?
Devontae Adams.
Well, Devontae Adams is kind of tough because
1 and 2.
He ended up getting injured, but Devontae Adams, had like 5 points and then had like 10 points.
DeAndre Hopkins or
DeAndre Hopkins, I guess you could throw in the mix. These guys that have slow starts.
Lots of people with Mike Evans.
Mike Evans is a very good example. I think he only had like he had 3 points in 1 week, and then the next week he had under 10 like the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season.
Right.
Everybody was freaking out. I remember articles and all this stuff about
who's
bench
the best
Mike Evans, all this
bench
stuff.
Mike Evans,
and then in like week 3 or 4, he went boom, 40 points, and he was off to the races.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of guys every year that get drafted high, have 1 or 2 bad weeks. You know who's another very good example of this? Who's on my team, and I traded him, but I don't regret trading him. But it was James Conner. James Conner started off the year extremely poor. I want to put the numbers out in front of me, so if you just give me a second.
Yep.
But he started off the year very poor. And then but if you paid attention, looked at his schedule, you were like, this guy's got a good stretch of games. Maybe I should pick him up. So his first 3 games, he had 8, 12, and 5. So not very poor, but not what you wanted from a guy you probably drafted at the end of the first round.
Yeah.
And he only had 10, 11, and 13 carries, so he wasn't really getting involved. But if you traded him in week 3, you probably regretting it, because in the next 4 weeks, 22, 11, 27, 22. He got injured after the 22 and ended up falling apart. But if he would have stayed healthy, he would have played the Rams, the Browns twice, the Bengals, the Cardinals. Like, he had a pretty easy schedule to continue his big stretch. So there's a lot of these guys that you draft early, and then you just give up on. Don't do that.
Right. I think the other thing is predicting, and this is the game that I play with a lot of people in fantasy football, is the understanding that certain games mean bad things for certain players.
Correct.
You have bad matchups. They might have a bad game. You take advantage of that bad matchup, and you maybe they have 2 bad matchups in a row, and that guy has 2 bad weeks in a row. Yeah. That player starts thinking, oh, well, what's going on? I need to get rid of this guy? What's happening? And then you see the schedule. The schedule is bad at that point, but the rest of the season it's really good. Then you take advantage of it.
Right.
And so that's just coming from the side of getting somebody like that to trade, somebody who's going to panic to trade their asset. And for me, it's like you definitely, like, studs make your fantasy football team.
Would you include? I mean, this guy isn't quite on that level, but like George Kittle.
I told you George Kittle was trash in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, that
was me panicking.
George Kittle had first 3 weeks 9.
I didn't have him in any leagues, so
he had under 10 in all 3 of his first 3 weeks.
Right.
Starting he had bye week in week 4, and then in week 5 he went 17, 14, 5, 11, 16, 20, 21, 2, 15, 19, 16, 12. So he only had 2 games under 10.
That's crazy.
So George Kittle was another guy that a lot of people gave up on, including you. Like, I mean, we can keep naming players.
Right. The point is, you should not panic and trade your studs away and I think the biggest problem with trading your studs like this, where you panic and you sell them when they're at a low value.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Is
absolutely.
That you don't get the return. You know what I mean? You sit there and you go, oh well, I'm going to trade this guy because they're not having good games. Then you don't get the return for that player that you probably should have gotten, but because they're having bad games, you got, you know what I mean? Instead of you're trading away a player and getting an RB1, you're trading away a wide receiver 1 to get an RB1, you're trading away a wide receiver 1 to get an RB2 because you're freaking out about that player not
This was a little later in the season, but could you include Melvin Gordon?
Yeah.
Like when he came back, you were waiting for him all that time to come back. He came back and started off slow, which wasn't too surprising.
Had trouble.
Yeah, and then you were like, well, he's gone. He's not the same player. Austin Eckler's the guy. So his first 3 weeks, he sucked. You probably traded him.
Right.
Then he got 10, 24, 19, 10, 12, 16, 4, 19, 20.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So he was a beast after those first 3 weeks.
Yeah. Don't panic when your stud is underperforming and hold on to them. Unless it's like...
Unless there's a legitimate
Juju Smith-Schuster,
right? Exactly,
and like nothing's gonna change. Like, obviously, look at the circumstances and understand what's going on. But like, if you have a stud that's just
don't just be like, well, I drafted him in the first round, so he has to be good. Like, there's a difference between those two things. But yes,
and the final one, number 5, is don't save your waiver budget. I had this thought early in the offseason. Early in the preseason. Of doing this, and I didn't want to alert anyone yet because I want to see how A, the strat worked, and B, I didn't want to tip off my league mates. The battle of having a fantasy football podcast with a fantasy football league. But anyway, don't save your waiver budget. There's no need to do it. Early in the season's your best chance at getting really good players.
It is, yes.
And so for me, I'm gonna put this in 2 categories. Don't save your waiver budget for later in the season because there were so many teams in our league
that ended the season with half their budget, and it was like, what's the point? You could have at least put a good bid on
what I did,
somebody.
right, as I already had my team like planned out for weeks 15 and 16 when I was playing.
Yeah.
So when I got to week 15, the other team that I had like Matt Ryan playing one of the top, I think it was San Francisco, and he was like, no, I don't want to do this.
He ended up getting like 20 points, but
right. But so he was very bad matchup, and so he was like, oh, I can't play Matt Ryan in this matchup. I need somebody else.
Yeah.
It didn't end up working in the long run for him. I would have won if I just let him have this guy. But I blocked him, and I said, okay, he's got $40 in waiver budget. I got $41 in waiver budget. So I bid $41. And I was like, I have all this waiver budget. Who cares if I have it next week? Like, literally, my season could end this week. I don't want to have any waiver budget left. So my goal at the beginning of the season was to, I think our league is 200. Yes. My goal was to spend $150 in waiver budget in the first 6 weeks. And I think for me, wait that long don't hold on to it later in the season to say, oh, well, I can make some waiver wire additions later in the season. There's no whatever.
It was weird to see some of the different people how they use the waiver budget.
Yeah,
like in our league, somebody didn't use any of the budget. Then kind of thought I kind of figured that he thought he was like, oh crap, I haven't used any of my budget.
Yeah.
I kind of need to do this, and he spent like $100 on
player.
Who was the Giants running back when Barkley went down?
Oh, that's Wayne Gallman.
Yeah, spent $100 on Wayne Gallman.
Yeah,
and we had another guy, KJ. What is the Carry-On's backup running back who they originally thought was going to be Ty Johnson?
Ty Johnson.
I spent $100 on Ty Johnson. Like there was moves like that, where it's like that's a little much, but you should, as you said, the first few weeks are usually when you find the studs that come out. Especially week 1, believe it or not.
Right.
So in your first few weeks, you should spend most of your waiver budget.
Right. I think too the part 2 to this, and we got to conclude the show. But the part 2 to this is that I fully believe in saving parts of your waiver budget that you plan on spending for a specific week until after the waiver priority is passed, because I feel like so many guys, like, you don't know what is actually going to happen in your league until it actually happens. Like, there were several, and this is the nature of the beast, but there were several times, week 1, for example, right? Dak Prescott on the waiver wire. I looked at Dak Prescott and I'm like, this is a good game. He might actually be a top 4 or 5 quarterback this year. I need to spend the money on this. Yeah. I spent $35. Lo and behold, no one else put any bids on him. So I spent $35 for absolutely nothing. And I could have just got him for $0. So it's a risk, but if there's a player that's on the edge that maybe he's not going to get picked up, don't drop all of your waiver budget to get that one player. Save it for possibly the second half of the week where you're like, oh, some clown shoe dropped Miles Sanders off their team. Now I got to use a bunch of waiver budget to do that. When you were like, oh my gosh, I need a running back, and you spent all your money on Ty Johnson, that clown in your league dropped Miles Sanders on that same waiver system, and now you're like, oh well, I just spent $70 on Ty Johnson. Now I got to go out and spend money on Miles Sanders. It's like, it's that situation. So like sometimes I wait, see who people have dropped, and sometimes you end up with those wide receivers and running backs not even getting picked up for that particular week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, don't save your waiver budget. Those are the top 5 things we learned in 2019 from fantasy football. We're going to take those. There's so many other things that we learned. We'll probably talk about them over the course of the offseason. But it's going to be an interesting 2020. So from here on out, we will discuss many things for 2020 fantasy football.
It's the beginning.
It's the beginning. It's the beginning of the offseason, but it's also the beginning of your ride to a championship finally. Maybe for me. I'm just hoping. I've won so many leagues in my life. So many leagues. Back in the day, I used to do I try to cut it down now.
You were just sick of winning so much because you were that good. Is that what you're saying?
No. I used to play in some people I know play in 14, 15 leagues, and they're crazy.
Man.
And I now I only play in 4 to 5 because I want to pay attention to them. And not just sit there.
You used to play in 14 leagues?
I used to play in 14 leagues. So it was absolutely insane. But obviously, you shoot enough times at the wall, you get a championship once in a while.
Yeah.
I used to win 4 or 5 a year, and now I can't even win ours. So there's that. But yeah.
Competition, man.
Competition means everything. It's more fun that way. But that'll do it for this episode of the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Don't forget to check out our website at thefantasychampions.com. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. And if you haven't done it already, leave a review. See you on Tuesday, Fantasy Champs.
Peace out.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at TheFFChamps.